Welcome back to TestDouble's intro course on end-to-end testing with Cypress. In the last video, you installed Cypress, initialized a test suite, and wrote your first test. Before diving deeper into testing with Cypress, you will learn more about the kinds of tests that are valuable to write with Cypress. In this video, you will learn what real-world happy path tests are, learn what unhappy path tests are, learn the importance of writing business valuable tests, and learn how the number of end-to-end tests impacts test suite speed and maintenance. Let's get started. So, what is a real-world happy path test? Let's explore each of those concepts. In the context of end-to-end testing, real-world test is a phrase I use to describe a test that mimics the flow a real user would take with an application. For example, on a web app for booking flights, a real-world test could be searching for round-trip tickets given travel dates, selecting a flight from the available options, choosing airplane seats, providing traveler information, and confirming the booking. Those are all steps a real user would take, so you would include all of those steps in a single test. That may sound counterintuitive if you're more familiar with unit tests, where you typically handle multiple test cases, each with a single assertion. End-to-end tests are sometimes known as feature tests, because they usually run through a feature that is driven by business requirements. In other words, end-to-end tests should ideally align with business requirements to verify a software team is building what is being asked for. Another reason for putting so many steps in one test is speed. Remember from the first video that typically end-to-end tests are slow because they involve the full software stack and drive a real browser. If you break up an end-to-end test into multiple smaller tests, you multiply the high cost of data setup, running through the whole stack, and driving the browser for each test. Returning back to our beginning definition, these tests are usually also happy path tests. A happy path test is a real-world test that mimics the ideal or best-case user scenario. Our previous flight booking example is a happy path test. The user in the test successfully books a flight with no issues during any of the steps. An example of an unhappy path would test that one or more of the steps fail and would ensure that an appropriate error message or recovery path is presented to the user. Although it's valuable to know your application handles exceptions appropriately, if you try to test all failure scenarios, you will drastically slow down what is already a slow test suite. Also, recall that end-to-end tests are harder to debug because there are more points in the stack that could cause your test to fail unexpectedly. The more end-to-end tests you have, the harder it will be to maintain them if you encounter unexpected failures because you're spending time debugging tests. We will revisit this in a later video, but there are some ways to reduce the cost of speed and debugging in order to test expected failure scenarios if your team finds those tests valuable. Given all those reasons, TestDouble generally recommends limiting end-to-end tests to the most business valuable, realistic, happy path scenarios in your application. Let's recap what you learned in this video. You learned what real-world happy path tests are, what unhappy path tests are, the importance of writing business valuable tests, and how the number of end-to-end tests impacts test suite speed and maintenance. In the next video, you will write a real-world happy path test for the YAMS application, as well as learn new commands and selectors for interacting with forms.